Welcome to the Cork Creative Podcast. We have started this podcast to provide all the wonderful people working imaginatively and innovating in the creative arts and in business a platform to discuss their journey to now, plans for the future, and lessons learnt. If you would like to learn more, please visit corkcreative.ie. I am Geraldine Hennessy, your host. I work for Flux Learning, a digital education company proudly situated in Clonakilty, County Cork, where I live and work. I'm delighted to be joined by Aoife McLaughlin, born and reared overlooking the beautiful beach at Inchydoney in Clonakilty, and now living in nearby Bandon with her husband Phil and dogs Joey and Rocco. I went to school with Aoife, and whilst my memories of Miss O'Connell's art class in Sacred Heart Secondary School might be fading fast, I can attest to her talent as a teenager. Scrolling through my Instagram feed a few weeks ago, her beautiful work stopped me in my tracks, even though her marital name didn't mean anything to me immediately. When the penny dropped who this Aoife was, I knew she needed to be a guest on our podcast. So today we will discuss the obvious challenges presented by the pandemic, but also lessons learned and plans for 2021 and beyond. Aoife's career, her motivation, approach and inspiration. You are very welcome to Cork Creative, Aoife.
Hi Geraldine, thanks a million for having me on.
No problem. First and foremost, we will address the obvious question. How has 2020 and the early parts of 2021 been for you personally, as a physio and as an artist in West Cork?
For me, there's been positives and negatives. Like as a physio, at the very beginning, there was a lot of fear. Like we were preparing for the worst. So definitely there was a lot of anxiety just going into work. And then interestingly, like I had more time, but I couldn't create anything. Like there was a couple of months where I actually didn't do anything creatively. I wasn't able. And I think a lot of artists maybe felt the same, where we had time, but just weren't in the right headspace. But then as things settled down, I definitely had more time without distractions. Normally you'd be going to meet people and going for lunch and stuff, and we couldn't do that. So I definitely had more time to just get focused and think about where I wanted to go, and then create more pieces. And actually it was my busiest year in terms of sales. Like people were incredibly supportive, I think, especially of local artists. And I couldn't keep up with orders. Sometimes I just couldn't get over how people were so supportive, and they were still buying art. I thought, who's going to buy art in a pandemic? It's going to be the last thing on people's minds. But actually, I found, I was busy, and it was good. So there was positives and there was negatives, but overall, it was good, I suppose.
Well, I suppose a lot of people are at home more and are in their houses more and want to be surrounded by nice things to look at. I know that about my own house. I've never seen my house in such a light as I have done in the last few months. So I can understand why people would want to all of a sudden go, you know what, I think I'm going to buy this art. And it's nice to support local people, and local artists, especially during a pandemic when things can be difficult for people.
Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was going to be the opposite, but it was good, Yeah.
And the first few months, was it just that you felt that I've loads of time and I'm going to be able to create loads, but actually then when it came to it, you're like, oh God, where am I going to get my... You just found it hard to just get into the groove, I suppose, was it?
Yeah, and I think because I had so much more time, I felt like I was under more pressure to produce more. And then I just couldn't. I don't think I did anything for about 2 months. Now I was working, as a physio, and that was pretty stressful, just in the beginning, until they kind of knew where we were at. But then what I did was I just started really with this very small piece and did an hour, and then gradually I just got back into it.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that kind of block then,
Sure, it happens, I suppose, to all artists. They get a bit of a lull moment, and then the creative juices start flowing again, and you're off again.
But I think especially because, I don't know how anxious I felt, but it must have been there, underlying everything, that anxiety was probably affecting how I wasn't able to create either,
Yeah, because we're probably not aware of the underlying issues that might be there. I think that's what everyone, and I think sometimes too, the more time you have, the harder it can be. So working as a physio must be completely different to working as an artist. How do you marry the two?
I think they balance each other well. Like in my job as a physio, you're very much focused on the patient. So you're listening to, what problems they may have, and you're coming up with solutions to make them function better or feel better. So your focus is on the other person. Then when I'm doing my art, I'm creating it for essentially myself, I suppose. I'm not trying to please anybody else. And like in the beginning, kind of initially, I felt very self-indulgent. I had this time just to do what I wasn't thinking about another person,
Yes,
if that makes sense. So for me, there's a good balance. Like I really enjoy that part of physio where you're getting to kind of, work with other people. But I can be a bit more selfish with my art. I can go into my room and it's just my time and I'm just creating for myself. And I don't really, make my pieces based on what I think, a person might buy. I kind of create what I like. And so, yeah, it's that balance between, for other people and then for myself.
Yeah. So it's a good balance to have, I suppose. They're quite different. So, and they balance each other then in their differences, I suppose.
Yeah. And I also feel like socially, like when I'm at work, I'm surrounded by other people, my colleagues and patients. Like my whole day is around other people. And then when I'm doing my art, I'm very much on my own.
Yes.
And I don't have that, other people around me.
Yeah.
So I think I need both. Like I've been on a little bit of time off. I took a few weeks off there just to focus on my art, and it was great. But after a while, I was itching for a bit of company, So I'm glad I have both to kind of balance out,
I suppose it suits your personality because you're quite, a friendly person. I can't imagine you just being in a room by yourself, even though it might be the most amazing thing to be doing, all this artwork, but you're a real people person. So I think it suits you to have both.
Maybe, but I do enjoy my own company too.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that I'm going back to work now next week, and I'm looking forward to that too.
That's good. Yeah. It's a good balance you have. So, and you're happy with that. Very good.
Definitely,
Very good.
yeah.
So lino printing, it's not the most common artistic medium. What drew you to it in the first place?
It's hard to know. There was nothing particularly that said, I must do lino printing. I didn't see any other lino prints. But I was working in acrylics and then oils, and the kind of paintings I were doing were quite detailed and quite precise. That's kind of what I enjoy doing. And like the last time I had done lino was when I was 14 in school. Like with lino, you sketch your idea and then you transfer that to the sheet of lino, and then you carve it out using tools. Once you've it carved, you ink it up and then you press it onto paper. So like there's a few different elements. It's not just painting or drawing. Like there's kind of a sculptural element with the carving, and there's the inking and the printing. And even how you think about your image on the paper is different to how you think about it when you're painting. So like when you're painting, you have tones and shadows and shades, and you don't tend to have that with lino. Like you can, I don't tend to do that style. So you're very kind of, you're thinking in a more graphic kind of a way, and your line has to be quite strong, So I don't really know, but I just got addicted. Once I started, I was like, this is, I love this, like I really enjoyed the painting. But then when I got into the lino, I just felt, this is what I want to keep doing, and just see, can I get better and better? I mean, I'm self-taught. I did one course in corporate makers on it, a weekend course. But apart from that, I'm just learning as I go.
Do you think that it's a thing that you will just get better at, or like, is it a learning curve for you when you look back at your earlier work? Have you seen improvement on it since the beginning, or?
Definitely. Definitely my coordination is better, and just even what I'll take on, like before I would have kept my pieces very small, or not too detailed, because I wouldn't have been sure I'd have been able to get that level of detail, whereas now I can take on much bigger pieces, and, even if there's very fine lines or fine detail work, I feel I could tackle it much better. And even like I bought a new press there recently, so that takes a bit of figuring out, and how to work the pressure, and so there's so much I need to learn, and there's so much I am learning. So yeah, I see how things go.
But it's like I've watched your videos on Instagram and on your website. It's just, it's actually really relaxing to look at you doing it.
Yeah. I just put up my videos and I'm like, do people actually want to see this? But
I think it's really interesting. Yeah, I must say I thought it was quite engaging, and it made me like, that's how I first came upon you on Instagram. Was I just saw one of your videos and went, oh my God, who is this? And I thought, wow, this is really interesting.
I think with print, I don't know if people always know what goes into making a print. Like sometimes people see a print and they just think it might be done by a computer or you can just press print on a machine. Like, and people haven't really heard of lino. And I just felt there's so much work going into this. I'm not pressing print on a machine. So I just felt the videos were a way to show people what I actually do to create the piece. And then I think they can enjoy the piece more and have more of an appreciation for it.
Because there's a lot of work in it. Like, it's not as you say, it's not a press a button and out pops this beautiful print. And it's nice to see, because it's not going to be perfect, and that's part of the charm of the final piece, in my opinion, anyway,
And that's part of the challenge for me, because I like it to be perfect. So I have to sometimes go, I wouldn't notice that, if I was buying the piece, or, like, I think there is a charm in it not being perfect either, because then you can appreciate that it's made by someone's hands,
Exactly, yeah, because it's handcrafted, and that's part of the appeal of the whole process then,
Yeah.
So, like, what or who are your biggest influences?
Again, this is kind of a hard question. Like, there's no one lino printer or print artist or anyone that I kind of look at and go, oh yeah, well, it's amazing. I tend to get my inspiration from, or influence from, just random things. Like, I could be looking at a magazine and see a color combination and think, oh, that could make something interesting. Or I might see, I don't know, anything in a painting or a book that might just spark off an idea. But I suppose one of the people who influenced me the most in terms of trying to turn this into more of a business or like make a bit of a living from it was an artist called Roisin O'Farrell. She's a Wicklow-based artist. Now, she's very much into oil painting, and I did an online oil painting course with her. But then she did a business skills course for artists in Cork in January last year, and I did that with her. And she just made the point, like, if you're going to do this as a hobby, well, then just do it as a hobby and enjoy it. But if you're going to try and make a living from it, or some bit of a living from it, then you have to also think of it as a business. And that kind of changed my mindset from thinking of it as a hobby to thinking of it as a business. And I'm not a business person. I have no idea about all that. But it just started to focus me. Okay, do I want to make a bit of a living from this? Could I? And in that case, I need to look at things like branding and marketing and selling my work and pricing and, uncomfortable things sometimes for an artist. But that was kind of a massive influence on kind of changing my mindset from it being a hobby and, look, maybe I'll sell a few pieces here and there, to kind of going, okay, well, could I balance this with my physio and make some bit of a living from it? She's an artist who does that very successfully, so her course was great. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to hear you talking about influences, say, from outside, not just what we would say, another artist of, say, a lino print artist is giving you an influence. You find inspiration kind of in the day-to-day as well as everything else. So when you ever go through a magazine, you come across something, do you write it down, or do you just remember it, or how do you keep track of all your inspirations then, or your ideas?
I write this. I have reminders in my phone. I have like a memo list in my phone. I'm constantly writing stuff down. I have little diaries, or little notebooks that I write stuff in. And oftentimes it's nighttime, just when I'm about to fall asleep, I'll think of something will come back into my head, and I'll play it over and over in my mind, trying to come up with how that would look visually. Like, sometimes it's just a feeling or an emotion that I'll try and show visually, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I could lie awake for a couple of hours and then hopefully remember it in the morning when I wake up. That's how I tend to work,
So yeah. Can you describe your art and approach to those listening who may not yet be familiar with your work?
I have kind of two main areas that I'm working on at the moment. So the first would be my coastline series. So that's where I take like OSI maps, the maps which have all the contour lines, and I outline the coast and the contour lines, and then I transfer that image to the lino. And then I carve out those lines, and then I ink them in this kind of a rich metallic gold ink. And then I press them onto this very light azure blue paper. So that's kind of one of my series. And where I got the idea from that was my dad is very big into like family tree, the family tree. So he wrote a book for myself and my siblings on all of our ancestors and where they came from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just took out the book one day and I took out a map, and I was just looking at where my great grandparents are from. And like, to be honest, they're all within 20 kilometers, probably less of Clonakilty. Like we didn't travel far, So I just love the way that the contour lines connected all my ancestors, these were unconnected people, but lines were connecting them on this map. So I did this map as kind of a visual form of my family tree, and I inked it and I printed it for my parents. And then that just gave me the idea. It looks like a map, it's a map of Ireland, but it's still quite contemporary. Like, it's not in your face a map, So yeah, I just started doing like just small coastlines. So Clonakilty Bay, Cormacsherry Bay, and then I went a little bit bigger. So they were A5, and then I went up to A3, kind of the West Cork coastline. And then I said, I'll try bigger again. So I went to A2, which is the biggest sheet of lino I can reasonably work with, and I just did big coastlines, say, down Sheep's Head area, Bear Peninsula, and then I went up to Clew Bay, and so I'm working my way around Ireland with those big coastlines. So that's one of the areas, or one of the series I'm kind of working on.
Your geography must be very good.
But then someone will ask me, do you have a print with this area? And I'll have to go back and look at the map. Yeah. But and then one of the other series I'm working on is, I don't know if there's a name for it, but it's kind of like motivational or inspirational prints or something. But it's that's more based on kind of your emotions in a visual form. Like, so say one of the ones which is popular is this triptych of a girl it's called Be Brave, Dive In and Swim. So it's a woman who is standing on the edge of a diving board, and she's just at the very edge. Her toes are over the edge. She's about to jump, but she's still not. She hasn't quite jumped yet. And that was just from like I was walking to work. I was trying to make a decision, and I got this image of just standing on the edge of a cliff. Would I jump, or would I stay where it was safe? And I wanted a print to kind of remind myself to just go for it. What's the worst that could happen? So I did a print. So it's a series of 3. So in the second one, then she's diving, and then in the last one, her legs are up in the air. She's in the water.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So I put that in my bathroom, and then I put it up on Instagram, and next thing people they just liked it, and they weren't going to buy it.
For it.
So yeah, I've just done a few of those kind of prints, and people tend to like them sometimes too.
Your pieces are very intricate, and working with lino can be unforgiving. How do you stay focused?
Well, definitely with lino, like you have sharp tools, and you're carving very fine lines, especially in some of my pieces. And like I could be working on something for days, a big A2 piece, and I'd be coming to the very end. And if I'm distracted and my hand slips, that's the end of the print. That's all your hard work. You start again. It doesn't happen very often, or if it does happen, you might get away with it, because I tend to overthink things. I'd be talking to myself constantly. If I do that while I'm doing my lino, I will always make a mistake. It's just a given. So what I do is I put on my music, and I just say, just follow the line, and it's like a form of meditation or mindfulness or something.
I was going to say that sounds like meditation. That you have to focus on what you're doing, and you have to kind of forget about all the outside stuff and just focus on what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, and like the minute if I feel my mind wandering, I go, Aoife, you're going to ruin this print if you don't stop. And it just forces me to stop and just get back to focusing on carving and the line. And I could spend hours in that zone then.
And would you be exhausted after it? Like, that sounds like exhausting to me, that you're just focusing so narrowly on something so intricate. Like, it must be very tiring.
I do get headaches after if I've been all day. And like sometimes I'm like, no, I'm getting this finished, I'm staying up and I'm going to get this finished. Now Phil, my husband, he has kind of said to me, if you have to just stop at 6 o'clock, like, just just put it away, take weekends off, stop at 6. Because there is that temptation to just get another bit done, just the next bit done, and then it's 2 hours later. So yeah, you definitely have to focus when you're doing lino printing.
Gosh, I just remember back in art class, and I'd be there carving it out, and then I'd slip and be like, oh God.
And if you cut your fingers, like I'm covered in cuts, like,
When I was looking through all your pieces up on your website and on Instagram, I was like, gosh, that's just amazing. I'd never be able to do that. And I have so much admiration for you, knowing how difficult it actually is. Because when you see the finished product, you're like, oh yeah, that's lovely. And isn't it beautiful? And that's easy, but it's not easy. It's very difficult.
That's where the videos, I think, helps to show what you do. But also as time went on, I invested in more like better quality tools and better quality, for rolling out the ink. And I got a press there recently, which has totally changed things. So that has made things easier. Like, you don't realize how hard it's been until you get a better carving tool, and you're like, oh, right, okay, this is much better. So I'm glad I've kind of put a bit more money, not just gone with the kind of the cheaper stuff.
And you've invested in your art as such. And like, is it hard to find equipment like that? And like, I presume it's kind of specialist enough,
It can be. Unfortunately, I have to get a lot of my stuff from the UK. Like, I really try and source stuff from Ireland as much as I can, but because it's so niche, like, I do get stuff from Cork Art Supplies, and like, I get like my frames from Strand Framing and things like that. But like some of the inks and the more kind of specialised equipment, I do have to source it from the UK.
Of course, you're not just a lino print artist, but also a very talented painter. Do you think you'll move into other art mediums in the future?
Like I might go back to painting at some stage, but there's something about printmaking that has kind of captured my interest. There's other areas of printmaking I'd love to look at, like etching and intaglio printing. Like, I have never tried them, but I love the effect that they create. Like with lino, it's a relief print, so you're carving out an area and then you're printing the area that's left, and then with intaglio, the areas you carve are the areas that get printed. If you know what I mean,
it's kind
you
of the
force
reverse.
the paper down into the carved areas, which gives a beautiful effect. So that's something I might look at in the future. But for now, I'm kind of busy with
you know the area that you like. You're happy with where you are, but you never know what's in the future.
You never know. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And are there any peer groups and networks in Cork that you find a helpful support as you start out as an artist?
For me, the local enterprise office has been really great. Like, a few years ago, I went to one of their business clinics. I think I've been to a couple of them, actually. Like, at the beginning, I was taking in stuff like just cards I had made, and they weren't great. And like, to be fair, like, it was Maeve Ring was there. She didn't laugh or tell me they were terrible. Like, she was like, no, this is something, you can work with, and trying to give me ideas of how to improve what I was doing and thinking about selling. And I also did their Start Your Own Business course. So that's like one evening for 6 weeks. And again, I found that really helpful, just thinking about, finance planning and all that. And then they do a Women in Business Day every year. So last year we went to Celtic Ross, and this year it was on Zoom. And they just, organise a range of women who have set up their businesses. And you just hear them speak about, things that they did right, things that they did wrong. And I found days like that really inspiring,
I suppose you can't obviously be brilliant at everything. So you were saying earlier that business isn't your forte, but you find that extra support that the Leo provided was good for you, that it gave you that extra, suppose, bit of confidence as you went out into your own art business. You found that good?
Definitely, like, and it just got me thinking about things I mightn't have thought about, like, you know, like in the Start Your Own Business course, they talked about, you know, becoming a sole trader. I didn't know what that was, you know, and, you know, doing tax returns and, you know, so I found even just to start me thinking about those kind of things. Was very helpful.
Get your artistic brain thinking a little bit more business wise. Yeah,
and just where I could go to maybe get more information as well. You know, like I'm sure there's like a mentoring program, I think, which I haven't really explored yet, but that's something I could look at if I needed to or wanted to, you know.
And how has your approach evolved in your art? How have things moved on with the way you do your art?
I suppose my skills have improved, definitely. My carving skills, I'm better at that. But also what I'll take on, you know, like before I would have worked very small. I would have been daunted by trying anything too big. Whereas now I love working in bigger pieces, you know. And I also, I suppose, I think more about like the colors that I use, the paper, the type of paper, and how that will look. Kind of. And
like, to say, do the materials that you use, do they impact on the final project? Like, say that you have to think of loads of different factors. So when you're making your lino print,
like one, I suppose, mistake I made in some ways, I didn't know better, was I print my coastlines on this. I suppose it's a pastel paper. Really, it's not specifically for printing. So it's quite thick and a little bit textured. But I just love that color, and I picked it for the color. But I can't get that paper. I can't get a different paper in that color, if you know what I mean.
Oh gosh!
But it makes it very difficult to print on. And to get an even print. If I had known that now, I don't know if I would have chosen that paper. But look, you learn. But you know, I've there's ways around it. Like I do make it work, but I do throw away more prints than I would like, because the paper is difficult to print on. So if I do a new series, I'll probably be more selective in the type of paper that I use.
Lessons learned for the next series. So like, what are the biggest challenges you face as an artist?
I would say for me it's probably working on my own, you know. Like I did apply, or I emailed Cork Printmakers to ask could I become for one of their memberships, you know. And it was like February last year, and then COVID hit, and they weren't taking on any new members. And also I think now there's I don't think you can go in there now anyway. So I'm working very much on my own. So like, no, I have, like, I'm in a few, like a lino group on Facebook, and I'm in a kind of a Bite the Biscuit. This is a kind of a group on Facebook again for people who have small businesses. So they're great. Like if I have a question or if I'm sure about something, I can go onto the group and ask. But essentially I have to kind of figure things out myself. And I probably make more mistakes than I would if I had somebody, if I was working alongside somebody, you know. So that's probably one of the challenges. And also it's probably just having the time to not just create art, but also the business side of things. Now that I'm hoping to try and maybe sell more pieces. That's something I would have probably struggled with, trying to be like a marketing person and know about finance, and even just things like sourcing, packaging, and taking photographs of my work and replying to emails. You know, like you have to do they take more time than I thought. And so it's trying to manage all of those. you know?
Have to be the sales department, the marketing department, you have to be the creative department, you have to be loads of different departments when you're an artist.
And as I said, like I'm not, my background isn't in business. My family background wouldn't be in business. So now my husband is, so he's great. Like I can ask him questions as well. But but still, like, a lot of it is just learning as I go and just saying, oh yeah, I'll just try it and see what happens, you know.
Yes, but sometimes that's the best way, and you'll learn and you'll remember the lessons you've learned. Whereas if someone told you something, you mightn't retain that as much, you know, whereas if you make the mistake, you'll remember it for the next time.
Well, hopefully. Or else just make it again.
Well, in my case, that happens quite a lot. What is your dream project, or what would be your ideal work thing that you could do?
Well, one of the things is that I have a half-ton printing press sitting in my sitting room at the moment. It's in the corner. It's from the 1860s. It's an old treadle printing press. It's got one of those big flywheels, you know, so it's cast iron, I think. I happened across a girl who was selling one last year. She was moving house. She needed to kind of sell it quickly, and I just thought, I just have to, get this. It's a great opportunity. Like, I was thinking about getting a smaller tabletop one, and this is big. Like, I mean, this takes up a bit of space, and I suppose I haven't had as much time as I wanted to kind of get to grips with it. I've tried a little bit, but there's a bit more learning involved maybe than I thought. But I'm doing an online course now on it's letterpress printing, it's called, you know. It's where you kind of get that debossed effect into the paper. So I'm doing an online course on that, and then I'm also doing like an online digital design course, because to print with this press, in the old days, they would have gotten individual letters, you know, metal type, and they would have put together the sentences and the paragraphs and the pages, you know, individually made the words, you know, each page had to be done that way. And nowadays you can create a design digitally, send it to a company who make it into a plate for you. So I just need to learn how to design digitally, because again, I don't have a background in that.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, everything can be learned, and there's amazing resources online, you know. So I just working away through those courses and kind of practicing on the press. But like, maybe someday I'll I don't know, come up with a range of stationery or something, so I can use the printing press. It's gorgeous. Like, I love it in my sitting room, but it probably needs to work for its money, you know.
And has this printing press got a name?
It actually doesn't.
Oh my God.
Most people name their presses. Yeah. But I haven't quite gotten there with that yet. She was called Minerva, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Minerva. The name of the type of press, it's a Cropper Minerva. It was built in Nottingham I think it's between 1865, 1867, I think, which is fascinating. They say it's called Cropper because if your fingers get stuck, you become a cropper, you know. But I don't think that's exactly why it was called Cropper. But it's a Cropper Minerva. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Oh my gosh! And it's in your sitting room. Is that where you do your printing, or do you have a separate area for doing your printing? Or
I do. I've taken over one of the bedrooms. That's where I do my artwork. But with the printing press, it's so heavy. Like, it's definitely over half a ton.
Oh gosh!
It has to go on the ground floor. It can't go upstairs because it'll come through the roof probably. And even getting it into our house, getting it out of that girl's house into our one was a feat. So where it is now, it can't move. Like, it's there.
Oh my gosh! So it's a piece of the furniture now.
Definitely.
So we spoke about your printing press there, but which piece of technology or software can you not live without, and why?
For me, it's probably like Instagram, I think, actually. Yeah,
but Instagram is the social medium really for artists. It's a perfect place for an artist to show their works.
Yeah, like I just started a few years ago, not to sell at all. Like, I never thought people would buy my stuff. It wasn't even in my headspace, really. I just said, I'll just put it up and kind of document my work, and then you can connect with other artists and see their work and get inspiration as well. But now it's the main form of how people see my stuff, and it's the main place that I get sales from. Is through contact on Instagram, you know, and you can like definitely connect with other artists. Yeah, I find Instagram is fantastic. Like, I don't have a Facebook business page, and up until recently I didn't have a website. So Instagram really was the only place that I would have gotten sales through, you know. I have, you know, a few pieces in couple of shops, like one in Clonakilty, Wild Atlantic Designs, and in Grey Heron in Bandon. But apart from that, it's 90% through Instagram.
It's a great thing, a great platform for small businesses, small artists to have and to showcase their work. And it's something that you've utilized quite well, because that's how I came across you. And it was on my Instagram feed and I instantly went, that's interesting. Isn't it great that you can get yourself out there and you showcase yourself very well? And it's quite appealing from a viewer just to kind of look at your Instagram page. You see the videos and you can see how the whole process is.
Thanks. I think a lot of it though is like other people, like I don't promote my posts or stuff. Like I know you can do that, but if someone buys your work and they share it on their stories or share it on their page, then that's a massive other audience for your stuff. So that's how I would have gotten a lot of my pieces sold, is through people putting up a story and sharing it, and then their followers would have gotten onto me, which is incredible, you know.
That's a great way for people to support other artists or other people, is by sharing and on Instagram, because it's a great promotional tool for yourself if other people share your stuff, you know. It's hard to sell yourself.
It is,
you know?
Yeah. To be fair, I'm not great at posting. Like some people post every day and there's all these algorithms you're supposed to do, or I don't know, but I don't probably post as often as I should, but then it can be a bit tiring because you've got to, you know, take photographs and put them up, and so I probably should use it better. But look, for what I can produce at the moment, it's enough, you know.
Yeah, it does well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there about your website. So you created that yourself, which fair play, it looks amazing. How did you find that process?
Yeah, I put off setting up a website for ages. Like it's only something I've done very recently. Probably because I didn't have enough pieces to sell, you know, like people would order stuff and I'd be trying to keep up with orders nearly, you know, so I didn't really feel like a website. I kind of needed it. But then, you know, Instagram only is for people who are on Instagram, and you're kind of cut off from a whole other audience as well, you know. And I was in this magazine, Interiors magazine, asked could they do a feature, and I was like, oh yeah, I needed a website. You know, you couldn't just tell people to go to Instagram, you know. So I set about doing the website, and like the local enterprise office give grants for people to, you know, to help with the costs of a developer. But then I thought, you know, I could try one of the website building sites myself. Like I use Squarespace. There's a few of them out there. And again, I'm not techie at all. So I definitely went the long and difficult way about it. But I just felt that if I did it myself, then if I ever wanted to tweak something or add a product, or that I could do it myself without having to go to somebody else. Like I loved the idea of being able to do it all without having to go to somebody else, you know. And it was tricky. Like Squarespace is good. It's not the most user friendly, but like you can get to grips with it. Like if I can get to grips with it, I think most people could. But even things like I had asked a photographer to come in and take a few shots to put them on the website, and then with COVID that couldn't happen. So I had to like take my own shots and edit them, and it's kind of tricky. It's fine, like it'll do the job for now, definitely, and I might get a developer to have look over it.
So you recently had an exhibition in Grey Heron in Bandon. It's great to see local businesses supporting local artists. How do you find the whole exhibition experience?
Well, look, Grey Heron is run by my husband Phil, so, and his brother Dave. So like, I did have it in there, you know. But at the same time, it was a bit daunting. Like I was thinking, will I or won't I? But I just thought, look, I'll just go for it. And the main thing it made me do was try to create a body of work. You know, I did an exhibition before there, years before that, it was just paintings, you know. There was no real cohesion to the work, you know, whereas this time I wanted to, it was just my coastlines, and I had to think about how they'd look and how many pieces I'd need to have. So for that, it was good. And also it just brought my work to a much wider audience. It's fine if your friends or your family buy your pieces, you know, but like, do people who aren't trying to keep you happy, like, would they actually buy my pieces? You know,
yes,
that's what I was trying to see as well. Like if I wanted to try and do this as maybe part-time job almost, I needed to know if people wanted to buy my work. objectively. So that was interesting, and it was really helpful.
So what are your plans for this year, for the rest of 2021 and beyond?
So one big thing is that I'm going to see, can I reduce down my days as a physio and supplement that with income from my art, which is a bit of a risk and it's a bit daunting. But I just feel, why not? Like, if I don't try it, I'll never know. So I'm going to try and do 3 days as a physio for 6 months, and then kind of, 2 days as an artist, but it'll be like every other minute we'll be doing my art.
Yes.
And just to see, like, is it financially feasible or not, So that's where I've kind of really tried to focus on my online shop and just thinking about, how can I probably promote myself a bit better and market a bit better. So that's one thing. And the other thing I want to do is get all the coastlines of Ireland done, which I'm very slow. But that's my plan, is to have pretty much every coastline. Now, I was doing very small areas, and like that would take me years, So now I'm really kind of just focused on the big pieces, and that way I'll be able to get around the coastline a bit quicker. Which, there's for and against that, because obviously they're more expensive. People like the smaller pieces too, because they're more affordable. So I just can't do it all at the moment. So I'll stick with that and just see how I go. And then the other thing is just to try and get my letterpress printer up and running, maybe as well, if I can.
A namer.
Yeah.
Very good. So I suppose finally, what piece of advice would you give to the aspiring artists listening? Like, what mistakes or good choices did you make that you think will be of benefit to others starting out?
I would say one of the things for me is just to get out of my comfort zone and just to say yes to something, even if I'm not 100% sure. Like, there's been, like, people have asked me to do prints that I wasn't sure I could do well, and then that just led to something else. So I would say yes to opportunities. Try not to overthink it too much, and also try not to be too self-critical. I think we're far more critical on ourselves than other people are. Like, I would never think about other people's work the way I think about might think of mine, So try not to be too self-critical and just go for it. And then I think the other thing is just to be kind of realistic with what you can achieve in a certain time frame. I'm definitely guilty of setting goals which are ridiculous, like, and then I get disappointed when I don't achieve them, but it was never going to happen in the first place. And then I get overwhelmed and I don't touch art for a few weeks, So I would say just to kind of break it down into achievable steps, and just, not focus too much on the bigger picture, just to kind of break it down to smaller steps that you can achieve a bit more easily, maybe.
Thanks, Aoife.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Thanks for taking the time to chat to us today on the Cork Creative Podcast. Aoife has recently launched an online shop, so do check out her website, aoifemclaughlinart.com. You can find out more information and links at the Cork Creative website.